Let me start with the truth that might sting a little. You're not actually angry. You're not. That heat in your chest, the tightening in your jaw, the urge to snap or shut down, that's not pure anger. That's a trigger. And the longer you confuse the two, the more you'll keep sabotaging your own peace. We're taught to manage anger like it's a standalone emotion. Don't yell, don't lose it, stay calm. But the truth is, anger is rarely the root, it's the reaction. It's the mask your ego wears when it's trying to protect an old wound. And unless you're willing to go underneath the mask, you'll stay stuck in cycles that feel like they're about other people, but they're really about you. Let me give you an example. You're driving, someone cuts you off, you slam the horn, your blood pressure spikes, your whole body reacts. But what's really happening? You're not angry about the car, you're triggered because it felt like someone disrespected you, like your space and safety didn't matter. In that split second, your brain says, they don't care about me. But is that fact or just your fear speaking? See the difference? Anger is easy to spot, but disrespect, rejection, feeling unseen, feeling powerless, those are quieter. They sit beneath the surface. And most of us were never taught to name those emotions. We just go straight to rage, withdrawal, or blame. But healing begins when you stop asking, why am I so angry? And start asking, what does this moment represent to me? You're not mad your partner forgot the anniversary. You feel unimportant. You're not mad your coworker got credit. You feel invisible. You're not mad they didn't text you back. You feel unworthy. And until you name the trigger, not just the surface emotion, you can't take back your power. You'll keep yelling, sulking, overthinking, people-pleasing, or ghosting, hoping the world will behave better so you don't have to feel that pain again. But here's the shift. Lead. You don't need to control the world. You need to understand yourself. And that starts with awareness. Pause right now and think, what's your default reaction when something stings? Do you explode? Do you retreat? Do you replay the moment 50 times in your head, building a case against the other person? That reaction isn't about strength. It's about survival. And survival mode is noisy. It says, defend yourself, get loud, get cold, get even. It's your nervous system trying to protect you from the version of the story it believes. But emotional maturity doesn't come from reacting louder. It comes from responding wiser. Let me tell you something I learned the hard way. You can't heal what you won't name. Most people stop at, I'm angry. But what if you said, I feel dismissed. I feel powerless. I feel like I don't matter. Now we're getting somewhere. Because when you can name it, you can tame it. You stop being a hostage to your reaction. You start becoming a student of your emotional landscape. And that's where real transformation begins. Think about it. If you never go deeper than I'm mad, you'll never realize that the argument with your partner actually triggered the same wound your father left when he ignored your feelings. You'll never realize that being passed over at work touched the same nerve that was hurt when you were the last picked in school. Anger is the smoke, not the fire. The fire is the belief underneath. The fire is the old story still running the show, and you reacting without thinking is just the alarm bell going off. So here's the first powerful shift I want you to make in your life. Stop treating anger like it's the enemy. Start treating it like it's the messenger, because it is. Your emotions are trying to help you, not hurt you, but only if you're willing to pause, to investigate, and to listen. You can't avoid being triggered, but you can stop giving your triggers the mic. You can stop letting them narrate your relationships, your decisions, your identity. Let me ask you something real. When was the last time you responded to a situation based on your values, not your emotions? Think back. Was it today, last week, or has it been a while? See, anyone can react. That's instinct. That's automatic. But growth is in the pause. Strength is in the space. Power is in choosing peace over performance. And it all starts with this one truth. You are not your anger. You are the awareness beneath it. Before you go, I want to ask you this. What's one situation in your life that's been making you angry? And if you're honest, what's the real emotion underneath? Drop your reflection in the comments. I'd love to read it. TUDA. Like this video, if it stirred something in you. And don't forget to subscribe, because this journey into emotional mastery and identity transformation is just getting started. Thank you for showing up for yourself today. Thank you for choosing growth. Let me tell you the truth about power, real power. It's not in the loudest voice. It's not in the sharpest comeback. It's not in the perfectly worded email, the slammed door, or the text you shouldn't have sent. Real power lives in the pause. That space, that one breath between the trigger and your reaction is where everything changes. And most people miss it because most people have trained themselves to respond on autopilot. We've built lives around speed. Reply fast, react fast, decide fast, text back faster. But the fastest reaction is rarely the wisest. It's just the most practiced. And that's the trap. When you feel threatened emotionally or physically, your nervous system kicks in before your wisdom does. Your heart races, your breathing changes, your body floods with chemicals that scream, "Do something now!" But here's the thing. Your first impulse is rarely your highest self. It's your fear, your ego, your wounds, your past. It's the part of you that wants to protect, not understand. And protection is good until it becomes destruction. Let me share a moment from my life. There was a time in my marriage when I misunderstood a comment my partner made. It wasn't disrespectful, but my brain told me it was. And in that split second, my body flooded with old emotions. I felt disrespected, unappreciated, angry. The urge to argue kicked in. I had the perfect response ready to go. But I remembered something I learned as a monk. Don't trust your mouth when your heart is tight. So I paused. Just 5 seconds. I took a deep breath. And in that breath, I realized I wasn't reacting to the moment. I was reacting to a story from years ago. A story that no longer served who I wanted to be. And that pause, it saved us from a fight that didn't need to happen. It saved my peace. It protected my growth. All because I remembered that I always have a choice, even in chaos. Let me break this down for you. When something triggers you, a tone, a glance, a delay, a rejection, your mind races to create meaning. They don't care. They're ignoring me. I'm not enough. But what if that meaning isn't true? What if you paused? Not forever, just 5 seconds. That tiny space is where your brain catches up with your body. That space is where your higher self steps in. That's where clarity whispers through the noise. Most people don't give themselves that space. They hit send, they say the thing, they lash out, and then they regret it 5 minutes later. Why? Because reacting feels powerful in the moment, but peace feels better in the long run. Pausing is not passive. It's the most active thing you can do when you feel emotionally hijacked. It takes more strength to stay silent than to speak in anger. It takes more discipline to wait than to respond in defense. It takes more maturity to breathe than to explode. We admire emotional control in others, yet we call it weakness in ourselves. Why? Because we've been taught that loud is strong. But I want you to hear this. Silence is not weakness. It's wisdom wrapped in stillness. The people who pause aren't weak. They're warriors of the inner world. They've trained themselves to stay calm when the world goes chaotic. They don't lose control because they've chosen to build it. And you can too. It starts with a breath. One breath where you interrupt the loop. One breath where you say, wait, what's really going on here? One breath where you give space for your values to speak before your ego does. Let's go deeper. Imagine this. You're in a meeting. Someone takes credit for your idea. Your instinct? Call them out. Defend yourself. Let them know they crossed a line. But if you pause just for a moment, you might realize this moment doesn't define your worth. Their insecurity doesn't shake your identity. And now your response comes from strength, not scarcity. Or maybe you're texting someone, they take too long to reply, your brain builds a story. They don't care, they're playing games, you're ready to call them out or shut them down. But if you pause just 5 seconds, you remember your value isn't determined by response time. And now you choose clarity over chaos. The pause is your reset button. It's where you reclaim control. Not of the situation, but of yourself. Because let's be honest, most of the regrets we carry didn't come from not knowing better. They came from not pausing long enough to do better. That argument that spiraled, that email you wish you never sent, that relationship you torched in a moment of pride. You knew better, but you didn't pause. I want you to write this down, reflect on it, tattoo it in your habits if you have to. The pause is the gatekeeper between my reaction and my identity. Every time you practice the pause, you build a new story about yourself. One where you're not a slave to triggers, but a student of them. One where you don't give your power away to every emotional wave. One where you live in alignment, not reaction. And the more you practice it, the stronger it gets. It's a muscle. You don't build it by reading this. You build it in real time. You build it when you stop before yelling, when you breathe before blaming, when you observe before judging, when you respond instead of retaliate. This isn't about becoming a robot. This is about becoming a leader of your emotions, your energy, your evolution. You've been told emotions are the enemy. They're not, they're just messengers. And if you pause long enough to listen, they'll tell you exactly what needs healing. But if you react too fast, you'll never hear the message. So from this moment forward, I want you to remember, you are not your reaction. You are the pause before it. And that pause, that's where your future is, decided one breath at a time. Have you ever wondered why certain moments sting more than they should? Why a simple text left on read can spiral into days of silence and self-doubt? Why a coworker's tone in a meeting shakes your confidence like you're 10 years old again? Here's the truth. Most people never admit. You're not reacting to what's happening right now. You're reacting to what happened back then. Let that settle. That fire in your chest, it's not about the present. It's a flare-up from a memory you never resolved, a scar you never soothed, a version of you that's still aching to be seen, heard, and loved. We all carry emotional muscle memory. Just like your body remembers how to ride a bike or type without looking, your nervous system remembers emotional injuries too. And unless you've done the work to heal those wounds, every present-day situation that resembles the past will trigger the same reaction. Let me break it down. You weren't included in a group invite. Suddenly you're spiraling. You feel left out, abandoned, not good enough. But what's really happening, you're not just upset about the dinner. You're reliving the day your friends excluded you in school. You're not just mad at your partner for forgetting something. You're reliving the time your parents forgot to show up. You're not just anxious over feedback at work, you're reliving the shame of being told you weren't smart enough. The present is just poking the past. And if you don't recognize that, you'll keep fighting ghosts with fire instead of facing them with clarity. I remember coaching someone who said, "I just can't stand when people talk down to me. I snap." And when we dug into it, we found the root he was raised in a household where his opinions were constantly dismissed. His words never mattered. So today, any tone that feels slightly patronizing isn't just annoying, it's personal. It's not about today's conversation. It's about years of emotional silencing that never got resolved. This is what I call emotional time travel. Your body goes back in time. Your reaction comes from another era. But the damage is happening now in your relationships, in your peace, in your growth. The only way to stop this cycle is to name the pattern. Let's be real, you don't get to choose your triggers, but you do get to choose what you do with them. When something lights you up inside, I want you to ask, is this moment echoing an old wound? Because most of the time, your anger isn't new. It's inherited. It's conditioned. It's layered. And here's where it gets even deeper. Some of your biggest emotional reactions are based on someone else's pain that got passed on to you. Your parents' fears, your culture's expectations, your childhood environment, the unspoken rules you were raised by. And so when someone forgets to thank you, it's not just rude, it feels like a lifelong pattern of being underappreciated. When someone raises their voice, it doesn't just annoy you, it sends your nervous system into the same panic you felt when discipline meant silence and shame. But here's what no one teaches you. Your reaction is not always proof of the present. Sometimes it's just residue of the past. And unless you recognize that, you'll keep burning bridges, building walls, and losing control, all while thinking you're just emotional or hot-headed. You're just unhealed. And that's not an insult. That's an invitation. Healing doesn't mean you forget the past. It means you stop letting it control the present. It means when that familiar pain rises up, instead of reacting, you pause and ask, what does this remind me of? Is my reaction to the person or to the pattern? Am I fighting for truth or protecting a wound? This kind of awareness takes courage. Because the truth is, it's easier to lash out than to look inward. It's easier to blame others than to confront what you've been avoiding for years. But if you don't go within, you will go without peace, without clarity, without growth. The beautiful thing is, once you start naming your emotional patterns, you begin to rewire them. You realize, ADE, that your partner is not your past. LE, that your boss is not your bully, .T, that your friend's delay in replying isn't the same as being abandoned. The moment you separate your history from your reality is the moment you stop being triggered by everything that breathes. This is the work. This is the process. This is the path to power. Now, some people will hear this and say, but Jay, how do I even begin healing these wounds? They're deep, they're old, they're painful. And I hear that, but healing doesn't require perfection. It requires honesty. It starts with simply noticing, naming, getting curious instead of getting reactive. The next time something upsets you, I want you to pause and ask, is this pain present or is it patterned? Because once you see the pattern, you can start to rewrite it. Once you recognize the wound, you stop expecting the world to bandage it for you. And that's freedom. You no longer need people to behave perfectly just to keep your nervous system calm. You no longer outsource your healing to apologies you may never receive. You no longer react from the child version of you. You respond from the healed adult you're becoming. So here's what I want you to remember. Old wounds don't have to define your new life. ALT triggers don't have to become tantrums. Patterns don't have to become prisons. But only if you do the work of noticing, naming, and nurturing the part of you that's still hurting. You can't control when someone presses your button, but you can control whether it still detonates you. And that's real growth. Because every time you pause, reflect, and respond differently, you're not just changing the moment, you're changing your wiring, you're reconditioning your nervous system. You're proving to yourself that you are no longer living in the past. You are present. You are aware. You are free. This is emotional mastery. This is identity transformation. And it begins when you choose to stop reacting from your wounds and start leading from your wisdom. Let me tell you something that most people live their whole life never realizing. Your emotions are real, but that doesn't mean they're true. Sit with that for a moment. Yes, you're feeling it. Yes, your chest is tight. Yes, your stomach is in knots. Yes, your throat is closing. But does that mean your partner doesn't care? Does it mean you're not enough? Does it mean you're in danger? Not necessarily. You see, your feelings are valid, but they are not always accurate. There's a massive difference between I feel like no one cares about me and no one cares about me. One is a temporary emotional state. The other is a dangerous belief that, if left unchecked, becomes your lens for life. This is the mistake we all make. We turn passing emotions into permanent identities. We feel anxious and say, I'm anxious. We feel insecure and say, I'm not good enough. We feel overwhelmed and say, I can't handle life. And then that emotion becomes who we think we are. But here's the truth. You are not your emotion. You are the one experiencing it. And the one experiencing it, that's the part of you that holds the power. Let's go deeper. Your brain is a meaning-making machine. Its job is to protect you, to scan for danger, to keep you safe, not necessarily happy. And in trying to do its job, it creates stories to explain your feelings. You feel left out. So your brain says, they don't like you. You feel nervous. So your brain says, you're not capable. You feel jealous. So your brain says, you're unworthy. But those stories, they're not facts. They're projections, interpretations, echoes of old programming. And unless you pause and question them, you'll start living as if they're gospel. This is why emotional awareness is not optional, it's vital. Because unchecked emotions become unchecked narratives. Unchecked narratives become untrue identities. And untrue identities become a life you don't even recognize anymore. You start shrinking to fit the story. You start second-guessing your intuition. You start waiting for the world to fix a reality you built out of a single feeling. Let me be real with you. There are days when I felt like I wasn't doing enough, even when I was pushing myself to the limit. There were moments I felt like I wasn't loved, even when I was surrounded by people who cared deeply. And in those moments, the feeling felt real, but it wasn't the truth. And that's what emotional mastery is all about. It's not denying your feelings. It's not suppressing your emotions. It's discerning between what you feel and what is real. Think of emotions like weather. They change. They come and go. They can cloud your vision or make everything feel bright again. But just because it's raining doesn't mean the sun is gone forever. And just because you feel worthless doesn't mean you are. Feelings are signals, not instructions. They are messages. not mandates. When you say, I feel unworthy, ask, is that a fact or is that a flare-up from an old wound? When you say, I feel rejected, ask, is that their intent or is that my interpretation? When you say, I feel like a failure, ask, is that the truth or is that fear talking? Because emotional maturity is the ability to pause before you believe every emotion. Your feelings deserve a voice, but they don't deserve the driver's seat. This is what separates the reactive from the resilient. The reactive person says, I feel bad, so something must be wrong. The resilient person says, I feel bad, let me investigate why before I act on it. That's leadership. That's discipline. That's identity transformation. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're walking into a room and suddenly you feel like people are judging you. Your body tenses. You feel insecure. You want to shrink. But before you spiral, ask yourself, did someone actually say something? Or am I projecting old fears of not fitting in? Am I being observed? Or am I just self-conscious? This isn't about becoming emotionally numb. This is about becoming emotionally intelligent. Because when you believe every emotion without inspection, you will live in fear. When you challenge them with curiosity and compassion, you will live in freedom. Let me make this simple. Your emotion, I feel like I'm falling behind in life. Your truth, I'm on a unique path, and comparison is stealing my peace. Your emotion, I feel like no one respects me. Your truth, I need to communicate my boundaries and expectations more clearly. Your emotion, I feel like they're ignoring me. Your truth, they may be distracted, and it's not a reflection of my worth. That shift from emotion to insight is where your power lives. It's where your peace lives. It's where the real version of you begins to emerge, no longer controlled by emotional noise, but guided by emotional wisdom. But how do you start living this way? Step 1, pause when a strong emotion hits. Step 2, ask yourself, what am I feeling? Step 3, ask, is this feeling pointing to something real or something old? Step 4, respond from truth, not from the temporary intensity of the moment. Because here's what I've learned after years of studying the mind and emotions. You don't have to believe everything you feel, but you do need to explore it. When you stop treating your emotions like facts, you stop living like a puppet to your triggers. You start owning your experience. You start writing a new story. You start reclaiming your mental space. So the next time you feel anxious, angry, jealous, lonely, scared, instead of saying, this is who I am, say, this is what I'm feeling, and I'm going to figure out why. That is the voice of a mature mind. That is the voice of your healed identity. That is the version of you that leads with clarity, not confusion. And that, my friend, is emotional power. Let me ask you a hard question. How many times have you been disappointed, not because someone failed you, but because they didn't behave the way you expected? You're not upset they forgot your birthday. You're upset because you would have remembered theirs. You're not angry they didn't check in. You're angry because you're not frustrated because of what they did. You're frustrated because it's not what you would have done. And that right there is one of the biggest sources of emotional exhaustion, expecting other people to act like you. But here's the truth. They can't, because they're not you. They weren't raised like you. They don't think like you. They haven't walked through what you've walked through. They don't love how you love. They don't care the way you care. And the more you expect them to, the more you suffer. We've all done it. We write entire scripts in our minds. He'll say this, and I'll respond like that. She'll understand what I meant. They'll notice what I did and appreciate it, but they don't. They miss the cue. They don't see the effort. They don't meet the energy. And we're left hurt not because they were cruel, but because we expected them to play by rules they didn't even know existed. You ever realize how many unspoken contracts you carry? If I support you, you'll support me. If I show up for you, you'll show up for me. If I think of you, you'll think of me. But did you ever stop and ask, did they actually agree to that? We assume people will mirror our level of care. But what if they're just wired differently? This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about realizing your standard of love, effort, communication, and presence is your own masterpiece, not everyone else's blueprint. The moment you stop expecting you from others is the moment you set yourself free. free from resentment, free from constant disappointment, free from this invisible scoreboard of how many times have I shown up versus how many times have they. Let me tell you something. I had to learn the hard way. Not everyone is meant to show up how you do, and that's okay. I used to get so frustrated when people didn't reciprocate my level of commitment. I thought, how can they not see how much I care? But over time, I realized I wasn't frustrated with them. I was frustrated that I kept assigning my worth to how people responded. Read that again. Your value does not decrease because someone else can't match your depth. Your energy is not wasted just because it wasn't returned. You are not broken just because they didn't appreciate the beauty of your presence. Sometimes you give more. Sometimes you care more. Sometimes you love in ways they don't know how to. That's not your failure. That's your power. Because when you stop expecting people to be you, you start allowing them to be themselves. And that's where peace begins. You start observing instead of assuming. You stop needing people to validate your intentions. You stop personalizing every oversight, every delay, every forgetful moment. You stop saying, they didn't say thank you, they must not care. And start saying, they didn't say thank you, maybe that's just not how they express. You stop saying, they didn't support me, maybe I'm not important. And start saying, they didn't support me, maybe they're dealing with something I can't see. You stop writing people off for not being you and start accepting people for being them. Now hear me clearly. This doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. This doesn't mean you accept poor behavior. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. It means you become wise enough to stop handing out emotional IOUs and expecting people to repay them in your currency. You give because that's who you are, not because you expect a mirror. You show up because it aligns with your character, not because you're trying to train someone into becoming a version of you. That is self-worth. That is maturity. You stop trying to mold people. You stop trying to fix them. You stop trying to turn them into extensions of your own identity. You start letting people show you who they are and you believe them. Not with judgment, but with clarity. You stop being surprised when someone shows you their limits and you start adjusting your expectations accordingly. That's not bitterness. That's boundaries. That's not detachment. That's discernment. You can still love someone and not expect them to meet every need. You can still respect someone and not rely on them emotionally. You can still be kind and not be naive. You begin to say, this is who I am. This is what I offer. This is what I need. And if you can't meet me there, I can still honor you from a distance. That's how you protect your peace. You stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop demanding closure from people who can't give it. You stop waiting for someone to change before you let go of the frustration. Because your peace, that's your job. It's not your friend's job, not your partner's, not your coworkers, not your parents, not your exes, not even your therapist. It's yours. You can't keep giving people VIP access to your emotional energy when they haven't earned the privilege. So here's the invitation. Let people be late without assuming they don't value your time. Let people forget without assuming you're forgettable. Let people be imperfect without internalizing their behavior. Let people be themselves and you'll finally feel like yourself. Because when you no longer tie your self-worth to their reactions, you untie your peace from their unpredictability. And that is liberation. You were never meant to spend your life micromanaging people's emotional output just to feel okay. You were meant to lead yourself with grace, communicate with clarity, and release the rest. Let people be themselves and let you be free. Let me ask you this. If your peace was a physical space, a temple, a home, a sanctuary, who have you been letting walk in with muddy shoes? Because that's exactly what we do when we hand over our emotional state to everyone who texts, comments, gossips, disappoints, or disappears. We give them full access without even asking ourselves one simple question. Are they qualified to hold my peace? Listen, I want to say this clearly. Your peace is not passive. It's not something you stumble into one day when life finally stops being messy. It's not the reward for doing everything right. Your peace is a product of discipline. It's a decision. It's a daily commitment to yourself that says, I will no longer allow chaos to rent space in my mind just because I didn't set a boundary. We live in a world that glorifies being available 24/7. Respond fast. React fast. Stay looped in. always be on. But I'll tell you something, the world rarely admits your nervous system wasn't built for this kind of overstimulation. You weren't meant to jump at every notification, to explain yourself to everyone who misunderstands you, to defend your choices to people who only want to debate, not understand. And yet we do it. We let the phone dictate our mood. We let our command derail our confidence. We let someone else's bad day become our burden. Why? Because we haven't been taught how to protect our peace like it's sacred. But let me remind you, it is. Your peace is your power. It's the space where you hear your intuition again. It's the clarity that helps you make aligned decisions. It's the grounding that keeps you from spiraling back into habits you've already outgrown. And if you're not guarding it, someone else is shaping it. Let's get practical. Peace doesn't come from waiting for the world to calm down. It comes from making strong, uncomfortable decisions that prioritize your well-being over your people-pleasing. It means saying, no, I don't have the capacity for this conversation right now. No, I'm not going to engage in gossip just to feel included. No, I don't need to explain my boundary to make it valid. It means recognizing what cost you your calm and refusing to keep paying that price. It means unfollowing accounts that make you spiral. It means not checking your phone first thing in the morning. It means creating space, not just in your calendar, but in your mind. Because peace isn't found, it's protected. Now, some people will call this selfish. They'll say, you've changed. Let them, because when you finally learn to respect your peace, you will outgrow people who only respected your access. And that's a hard truth, but it's a liberating one. Because peace doesn't mean life is quiet. It means you are grounded even when life is loud. It means you don't have to match the energy of every room you walk into. You don't have to swing at every pitch. You don't have to join every argument, defend every decision, or chase every misunderstanding. You're allowed to say, I don't have to prove I'm right. I just have to protect what's right for me. Let's be honest. Some people aren't interested in resolution. They're addicted to conflict. Some environments aren't aligned with your growth. They're built to keep you small. Some dynamics aren't miscommunication. They're manipulation dressed as confusion. And the more you mature emotionally, the more you'll realize not everything deserves your energy. You stop fighting battles that don't serve your evolution. You stop explaining your boundaries to people who benefit from you having none. You stop hoping that your silence will teach them and start using that silence to restore yourself. Because peace is not a performance. It's not pretending to be Zen while secretly spiraling. It's not biting your tongue to avoid conflict, but boiling on the inside. Peace is internal alignment. It's knowing that you're living according to your values, not your reactions. It's knowing that what you allow is a reflection of what you believe you deserve. So let me ask you, who has unfiltered access to your energy right now? What habits keep interrupting your inner stillness? Where are you saying yes out of guilt instead of clarity? If you don't audit your peace, don't be surprised when it vanishes without warning. It doesn't leave all at once. It drips out quietly. Every time you say yes, when your body screams no. Every time you scroll to numb instead of rest to recover. Every time you reply out of fear instead of pause with intention. But here's the empowering part. Peace is reclaimable. You can choose today to draw a new line. You can say, I love you, but I won't keep explaining the same boundary. I respect you, but I won't sacrifice my sanity to prove it. I care, but I won't carry what isn't mine anymore. This isn't about cutting people off. It's about cutting off your own habit of self-abandonment, because that's what truly disrupts your peace. When you abandon yourself for the sake of comfort, convenience, or keeping the peace externally while you're falling apart internally. Let me remind you of something powerful. Protecting your peace is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's not avoidance. It's alignment. It's not ego. It's energy intelligence. You don't owe anyone your burnout just to prove your loyalty. You don't owe anyone your breakdown just to show you care. And you don't owe anyone access to your sacred space if they've consistently shown they can't handle it with care. So today, I want you to choose peace over panic, boundaries over burnout, stillness over stimulation, alignment over approval. Because the version of you that's calm, clear, and grounded, that version isn't found in the noise. It's built in the silence. And every time you protect your peace, you're not just saying no to someone else, you're saying yes to your future. You've done the inner work, you've named your triggers, you've practiced the pause, you've confronted the past, you've separated emotion from fact, you've stopped expecting others to be you, you've protected your peace. Now what? Now comes the part most people never do. You act, because reflection without action is just rumination. Insight without movement is just noise. You can know everything we've talked about. You can understand your trauma, your patterns, your triggers, but if you don't move, nothing changes. Let me say it clearly. Healing begins in awareness. Transformation begins in action, and not the dramatic kind of action, not quitting your job, cutting everyone off, or moving to another country overnight. I'm talking about micro movements, the 5-second windows, the small courageous choices, the moments where your old self says, stay here, but your higher self whispers, let's go. It happens the moment your alarm goes off and you want to snooze, but instead you say, 5, 4, 3, 2, I'm up. It happens when you feel the urge to scroll, numb, distract, and instead you say, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I close the app. It happens when your voice starts to shake, when fear kicks in, when self-doubt knocks and you say, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I speak. You don't need a year-long plan. You need 5 seconds of courage. That's the shift. That's the moment when everything changes because you stop waiting to feel ready and decided to lead anyway. Let me be real with you. Your brain isn't designed to make you successful. It's designed to make you safe. And safe looks a lot like stagnation. Your brain will tell you, don't have that conversation, it might go wrong. Don't try that, you could fail. Don't leave, it might be worse out there. Don't pause, you need to defend yourself right now. And if you wait for the fear to go away before you act, you'll be stuck forever. Because fear doesn't disappear, it gets quieter the more you move toward it. Action is the volume knob for fear. Every time you act with intention, you shrink the space fear used to occupy. And that's how you reclaim control. Not by waiting for confidence, not by waiting for permission, not by waiting for the perfect moment, but by making tiny, bold, deliberate choices that align with who you want to be, not who you've been when triggered. Think about this. The version of you who lashes out, spirals, people pleases, avoids, or shuts down, that's not the real you. That's the programmed you. That's the conditioned you. That's the survival version of you. The real you is calm. The real you is grounded. The real you is intentional. The real you shows up in the pause, not the panic. But that version of you, you build it. You don't stumble into confidence. You create it one difficult decision at a time. You don't discover discipline. You forge it through resistance, through discomfort, through choice. Let me ask you something real. What is the one decision you keep putting off? Not because you don't know what to do, but because you don't want to face the feeling that comes with doing it. Is it the message you need to send, the boundary you need to draw, the conversation you need to have, the habit you need to stop, the routine you need to start? You already know what it is. Clarity isn't your issue. Courage is, and courage isn't some grand event. It's a practice. It's 5 seconds at a time. That's it. 5 seconds to pause instead of panic. 5 seconds to breathe instead of break. 5 seconds to respond instead of react. 5 seconds to walk away instead of stay stuck. And the more you honor those 5 seconds, the more you start to believe something powerful. I am the one in control, not my fear, not my feelings, not my past. That's the shift. That's how you break the pattern. You stop performing for safety and start living from purpose. You stop letting every emotional wave decide the direction of your day. You stop building your identity around triggers and start building it around truth. And I'll be honest, it's not always glamorous. Protecting your peace, it's messy. Choosing growth, it's uncomfortable. Breaking patterns, it's exhausting. But staying stuck, staying reactive, staying in emotional chaos, that's even harder because it costs you your clarity. It costs you your integrity. It costs you the future you could be living. So here's what I want you to hear loud and clear. You don't change your life in one big decision. You change it in a series of tiny, consistent choices where you honor who you want to become more than who you've always been. That's discipline. That's emotional maturity. That's self-respect. So when life presses your buttons, pause. When your feelings scream at you, breathe. When fear tells you to wait, count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and move. This isn't a trick. This isn't magic. This is biology leveraged with wisdom. Because that gap, the space between the feeling and the reaction, that's where your future is being written. In that space, you decide who's really in charge. Who do I want to be right now? What would the healed version of me do? And then you choose that. You live into that. You become that. So stop waiting for the noise to stop. Be the quiet. Be the clarity. Be the one who leads through stillness, not storms. Because you're not your past. You're not your wounds. You're not your reactions. You're the decision maker now. So take back your power 5 seconds at a time.